Have you ever wondered why some people look at you with desire but never make the first move? Today you'll discover the truth that no one has told you, and when you understand it, everything will change forever. There's a hidden secret in human psychology that explains why someone can intensely desire you but never approach you. And no, it's not shyness. It's something much deeper that Neil Strauss discovered after years of studying the most complex social dynamics. What you're about to hear will completely transform your understanding of human interactions. Imagine this. You're at a gathering. You notice someone can't stop looking at you. Their eyes follow you. There's tension in the air, but hours pass and nothing. They don't approach you. And you wonder what's happening. The answer lies in what we call the perceived value paradox, and it's more powerful than you can imagine. The first fundamental concept you need to understand is that silence speaks louder than any word. When someone desires you but doesn't speak to you, it's not because they can't. It's because they've unconsciously elevated your value to a point where they fear rejection more than they desire connection. Neil Strauss explains it perfectly. The fear of rejection is so powerful that the mind prefers to create safe fantasies rather than face a possible no. This defense mechanism is deeply rooted in our primitive brain. Think about the last time you felt that magnetic attraction to someone but remained paralyzed. What really happened? Your mind started creating scenarios. What if they reject me? What if I make a fool of myself? What if everyone finds out? It's exactly the same thing that's happening when someone desires you but keeps silent. It's not about you, it's about the internal fear they experience. Here's a quick exercise to understand this from another perspective. Close your eyes for 5 seconds and imagine the person you most admire or desire right now. Now, imagine walking up to them to start a conversation. Did you feel that knot in your stomach? That sensation is exactly what prevents others from approaching you. If you really want to change this dynamic, you need to understand that your presence is already creating an impact. You don't need to do more, you need to understand the invisible game that's happening. And we'll talk about that in the next point. The second crucial element is what Strauss calls the pressure of the first move. There's an enormous psychological tension in whoever must initiate the interaction, and this pressure multiplies exponentially when desire is intense. It's like a chess game where the first move determines the entire subsequent development. When desire meets vulnerability, a social paralysis is created that can only be broken with clear signals of emotional safety, explains Strauss. This paralysis is more common than you think, and it affects even people who seem extremely confident in other contexts. Has it ever happened to you that someone who is normally extroverted and charismatic becomes strangely shy in your presence? That transformation is no coincidence. Your energy, your way of moving, the way you occupy space, all of this is creating a perception of value that can intimidate even the most confident people. The problem is that most try to solve this the wrong way. They believe they should become more accessible, easier, when in reality this only diminishes interest. What really works is learning to maintain your value while creating bridges for connection. Let's do a practical exercise. The next time you notice someone observing you with interest but not approaching, instead of ignoring the situation or forcing contact, make a small gesture of acknowledgement. A subtle smile, a slight nod. This micro-gesture reduces pressure without diminishing your perceived value. It's like saying, "I see that you see me, and it's okay." Mentally repeat this phrase before entering any social environment. My presence is a magnet. I don't need to chase. This simple affirmation reprograms your non-verbal behavior and emits a confidence vibe that makes others feel safer to approach you. If you've made it this far, you already understand that the silence of someone who desires you speaks of their inner world, not yours. But there's something even deeper you need to understand, and that's the concept of asymmetric value in human interactions. This will be our third crucial point. Asymmetric value occurs when someone's perception of you is so elevated that it creates an imbalance in the social dynamic. Neil Strauss discovered that this phenomenon is responsible for 80% of missed opportunities in human connections. When someone places you on too high a pedestal, communication becomes almost impossible because they no longer perceive you as an equal, he states. The fascinating thing is that this imbalance occurs completely in the other person's mind. You may feel normal, accessible, even insecure in some aspects, but they have built an idealized version of you that doesn't match reality. Imagine this. You meet someone new, and without you realizing it, something in your way of speaking, your energy, or your presence activates a memory of someone important in their past. Suddenly, without you having done anything specific, that person projects qualities, expectations, and fears onto you that have nothing to do with you. This phenomenon, known as transference, is more common than you imagine. Have you noticed how some people react exaggeratedly to your presence, either positively or negatively, for no apparent reason? This is exactly what's happening. It's not about you, it's about what you represent in their inner world. Here's a powerful technique to handle this situation. Practice what Strauss calls strategic humanization. When you notice someone has put you on a pedestal, deliberately show a small vulnerability. Not something that diminishes your real value, but something that makes you more human, more accessible. It could be a funny anecdote about a small mistake you made, or showing genuine curiosity about something they know and you don't. For 1 week, every time you enter a social space, ask yourself, who is seeing me through the filter of their own expectations? Carefully observe people's reactions, and you'll notice revealing patterns of who is experiencing this asymmetric value with you. If you implement what I've shared so far, you'll already be several steps ahead of most people. But now we're going to delve into something even more powerful, the concept of unresolved tension. And this fourth point is where the magic really happens. Unresolved tension is the psychological space where desire grows exponentially. Neil Strauss explains it brilliantly. Human desire doesn't thrive on certainty, but on possibility. When something is completely certain or completely impossible, desire fades. It's in the middle territory where it flourishes. This concept perfectly explains why someone may intensely desire you but keep their distance. It's not that they don't want to approach you, it's that they unconsciously know that approaching could resolve the tension, and with it, diminish the pleasure of anticipation. Think about the best stories, movies, or songs you know. What do they have in common? Tension, mystery, the promise of a resolution that's delayed just long enough to keep you hooked. Human interactions work exactly the same way. Has it happened to you that when you finally get something you desired for a long time, the satisfaction wasn't as intense as the anticipation? This psychological phenomenon is constantly operating in our social and romantic interactions. Most people make a fatal mistake. They try to eliminate tension too quickly. They rush to define the relationship, clarify intentions, resolve ambiguities, without realizing they're killing precisely what makes the connection magnetic. Here's a transformative exercise. The next time you notice someone desires you but keeps their distance, instead of forcing a resolution, practice what Strauss calls the art of calibrated proximity. Get close enough to intensify the tension, but not so close as to resolve it. It's like a dance where you approach and retreat, always maintaining that electric space where desire flourishes. Apply this technique. When you're conversing with someone showing signs of attraction, move slightly closer during a moment of emotional connection. Maintain brief, intense eye contact, and then naturally reclaim your space. This pattern of approach and distancing creates an emotional roller coaster that intensifies desire without resolving it prematurely. Mentally repeat, tension is not my enemy, it's my ally. When you internalize this truth, you'll stop seeking immediate resolutions and start cultivating much deeper and lasting connections. So far, we've explored why someone might intensely desire you but remain silent. We've seen how fear of rejection, the pressure of the first move, asymmetric value, and unresolved tension play crucial roles in this dynamic. But there's a fifth element that changes everything, and it's what Strauss calls inverse recognition pattern. This revolutionary concept explains why some people feel deeply attracted to you but do exactly the opposite of what you'd expect. Instead of approaching, they distance themselves. Instead of speaking, they remain silent. Instead of seeking your attention, they seem to avoid it. And all this happens because of a fascinating psychological mechanism that few people understand. When the brain detects a high-value stimulus but perceives an elevated risk of rejection, it activates a protection mechanism that inverts the natural approach behavior, explains Strauss. In simple terms, the more they desire you, the more they might distance themselves to protect their ego. This phenomenon is particularly common in people who have experienced significant rejections in the past. Their brain has developed a hypersensitive alarm system that detects possible threats to their self-esteem and activates defense mechanisms before they're even aware of it. Have you noticed how some people seem to tense up or become strangely distant precisely when there's a special connection between you? Or how someone can look at you intensely, but then act as if you don't exist when you're near? This isn't indifference, it's exactly the opposite. The fascinating thing about this pattern is that it's completely unconscious. The person experiencing it rarely understands why they're acting this way. They feel the desire, the attraction, the curiosity, but something inside activates a contradictory behavior pattern that even they don't understand. Here's a powerful technique to handle this situation. Practice what Strauss calls the psychological mirror approach. When you notice someone showing this pattern, evident desire but distant behavior, instead of pursuing or confronting, subtly reflect their behavior but with a slight openness. If they're distant but look at you, be slightly distant but offer an occasional small smile. If they avoid contact but seek to be in your orbit, maintain your space but create proximity accidents. This approach works because it deactivates the alarms in their protection system. By reflecting their behavior, you make them feel safe. By adding small openings, you create bridges they can cross when ready. Let's do a practical exercise. Identify someone in your life who shows these contradictory signs, evident interest but distant behavior. For the next week, instead of trying to solve the situation, practice the psychological mirror. Observe how gradually the person feels safer in your presence and begins to show behaviors more consistent with their true interest. The most powerful thing about understanding this pattern is that it frees you from confusion and personal rejection. When someone desires you but acts in contradictory ways, it's not a reflection of your value, but of their own internal protection mechanisms. Repeat to yourself, "Their silence speaks of their fears, not my value." This deep understanding will allow you to navigate with elegance the most complex dynamics and turn even the most challenging situations into opportunities for authentic connection. Now that you've understood these 5 fundamental elements, you're in a privileged position. You understand that when someone desires you but doesn't speak to you, it's not indifference, it's quite the opposite. You comprehend that behind that silence, there's a complex dance of desire, fear, perceived value, tension, and protection mechanisms. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you use it simply to feel better when someone doesn't approach you, or will you turn it into a tool to create deeper and more authentic connections? If you've made it this far, you're not the same person who started watching this video. You've seen behind the veil of human interactions and understand what most will never comprehend. This gives you extraordinary power, but as always, power comes with responsibility. Neil Strauss sums it up perfectly. Knowledge of human patterns isn't for manipulation, but for connection. When you understand the fear behind the silence, you can create bridges where others only see walls. The truth is that we are all to some extent prisoners of our fears and unconscious patterns. Understanding this not only helps you decipher why someone desires you, but keeps their distance, but it also allows you to look with more compassion at those around you and yourself. The path to deeper connections isn't in manipulation techniques, but in the authentic understanding of human nature. When you see the fear behind the silence, the desire behind the distance, the vulnerability behind the apparent indifference, you can respond from a place of wisdom and empathy. And that, precisely, is what makes you magnetic. It's not your techniques, it's your understanding. It's not your strategy, it's your perspective. It's not what you do, it's who you are when you do it. I invite you to take a moment right now and write in the comments, "I choose to see beyond the silence and connect with the truth behind the fear." This public commitment will not only reinforce your new understanding, but inspire others to do the same. If this video has opened your eyes to a new dimension of human interactions, share it with someone you think could benefit from this understanding. Sometimes, a simple video can be the bridge someone needs to free themselves from confusions that have lasted for years. And before we say goodbye, remember, every person you meet is fighting internal battles you cannot see. Every silence hides a story. Every distance conceals a desire. When you learn to read these signs, you don't just transform your relationships, you transform your entire experience of the human world around you. Subscribe for more content that unveils the mysteries of human psychology. Hit the bell to never miss anything, and remember, silence is never empty. It's always full of answers.